Hey y'all, it's David and it's Friday, I think, and the sun is shining and the sirens are blaring all around. Feels like an expression of the times. I am grateful for every day of sunshine these days, learning to appreciate it a little more. There's so much heaviness and loss around us that those sirens also signify. These times are full of that heaviness, and it feels like as a congregation we've named some of the agonizing losses that we still feel are coming, suspending activities into the summer, canceling some of our most treasured experiences this year in the form of mission trips and camps and VBS. It hurts to do this. It feels like the heaviness of the times is everywhere and maybe has even encroached in more closely on us this week in ways that are real and tender, and those fresh wounds we're tending to for each other. I hope that you're taking care through all of this, as we all need to be doing. You know, in many episodes of hurt I've experienced in my life, I've often been frustrated and even shaken a fist at God and said, "What do you want from me, from us?" And over the course of my life as an often hurting person, I've learned that this is actually a very biblical thing to do. So many episodes of the Bible are people wrestling with God and their own sense of identity related to God. And half the Psalms, of course, are expressions of anguish and disorientation by people who wanted to be turned to God but have struggled to do it. The Bible is also full of God's answer to the question so often on our hearts, what do you want from me and from us? When ancient people shook their fist at God and asked, what do you want from me, from us? God said to them, I hear you. I'm right here like I've always been, God said, with you in the anguish, but doing a new thing. You know what to do, God has said to God's children, and I've always been leading you to love me and to love others generously in whatever ways that you can. I'm mindful of this these days, especially of this these days, that's what St. Luke's has been about, its whole existence. It's how people in Dunwoody have felt loved and supported in their lives. It's how new ministries have developed across the world with trips to build things like relationships and life-giving structures. It's how new ministries developed nearby too, like Community Assistance Center and Family Promise and the Mommy and Me Preschool for Refugees in Clarkston, Habitat for Humanity houses. The list just goes on and on over the course of the life of our church. You know what to do, says God in the Bible. I've always been leading you to know me and to love others generously in whatever ways that you can. And so in these times too, St. Luke's has done just that. We've continued to love God and others generously in whatever ways we can right now. A wonderful new calling ministry to the congregation has emerged. Online worship and check-ins, a weekly prayer service for each other in the world, online groups, creative and safe ways to care for each other, increased focus on outreach. I don't know how we've done it, but we have, with Family Promise guests sheltering in place at our church, safe volunteering and giving through Community Assistance Center, personal support for the furloughed and those laid off. The list is lengthy. St. Luke's is as meaningful and difference-making as perhaps it has ever been, because we know who and whose we are and what we're to do. And there are marvelous examples of that emerging in our community of faith on a daily and weekly basis now. One of them I'm still drawing inspiration from is last Saturday morning's coffee and prayer with our friends from Dodd Sterling United Methodist Church on the other side of town. It was so good to see the faces of these friends to share their burdens that include injury and recovery, furlough and joblessness, and a lament they shared with us about the food they are able to offer in their food pantry. Demand for food in their neighborhood has gone way up, and they can't afford to give enough food to meet the demand, especially protein-rich foods like meat, they said to us. So we prayed to God for these burdens to be lifted, and they prayed for God to lift burdens on us in our ministries. And then as soon as I ended the meeting on Zoom, Daryl Moore, a member of our church who's used to stirring things up around us, called me and asked how we could help their food pantry. Decided that we could buy meat for them, and asked those on the Zoom call if they'd like to contribute. Of course they did, and now we have raised $1,500, it would seem, to fill their pantry with what they need. Wanting to get meat as cheaply as possible, I asked my friends who run food ministries for their advice, and they sure could identify with all the rise in demand for food in this moment in our world. And my friend Jeremy Lewis at Urban Recipe said, you know what, hey, we've actually got a load of meat in our freezers right now that needs a home. We can give it to them. And the story just went on from there. We now have, it would appear, have found a way to fill the Dodd Sterling UMC food pantry for weeks and even perhaps months to come, with a little generosity and a little ingenuity and a little embrace of the interconnected way that God is working with faithful people to do good and to lift up the lowly, as God has always done. It's such an inspiring story. I'm so privileged to be part of that unfolding story with God and our community life together. I'm mindful that God has said in the Bible, you know what to do. I've always been leading you to know me and to love others generously in whatever ways that you can, and so we are, and so we will. And this whole episode of our lives will one day, I believe, start to feel less like sacrifice and more like transformation. We should be used to it now, people of the Bible as we are, but let's enjoy the journey. I hope y'all have a great weekend. We'll see you Sunday.